Hey, good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday morning to you, and welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. We are continuing our study of the Olivet Discourse. Now, remember, traditional eschatology, all futurist paradigms, especially the amillennial and the postmillennial, they believe that the Olivet Discourse is divided into two subjects: fall of Jerusalem, end of time. Now, the dispensationalists believe that the entirety of the Olivet Discourse, with the exception of Luke 21, 20 to 24, refers to the so-called end of the current Christian age, the rapture and the second coming. We are focusing on the question, is the Olivet Discourse divided into two subjects? Now, remember, we are told that the great continental divide of the Olivet Discourse is Matthew 24:36, where Jesus said, "But of that day and hour knows no man, no, not the angels, but my Father only." That's a conflation of Matthew with Mark. But anyway, that means supposedly that Matthew 25, or Matthew 24:36 through chapter 25, verse 46, is supposedly about the end of time coming, quote, second coming, unquote, of Jesus Christ. I have been sharing with you how that absolutely cannot be true unless you are able to completely divorce, pun intended here, completely divorce what Jesus was saying from God's Old Covenant promises made to Old Covenant Israel about the time in which He would restore her and remarry her and resurrect her. Now, I've been spending some time on Isaiah chapter 49 because it's such a beautiful, beautiful text. It is the time in which, number one, God would restore the 12 tribes of Israel, Isaiah 49, verse 6. He would call the Gentiles, the nations, to Him. It would be the day of salvation, the accepted time, verse 8. It would be the time of the restoration of the earth, ha'aretz, in the Hebrew land. It would be the time in which He would lead His people to rivers of living water, which, don't forget, John in Revelation shares with us in Revelation 7 and Revelation 14. That was about to be fulfilled in the New Jerusalem, and it would take place at the destruction of the old Jerusalem, the city where the Lord was crucified. We have seen and shown how this is the time of the highway of the Lord. And John the Baptizer was Elijah to prepare for the highway for the coming of the Lord. And he said, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Now I'm giving this real brief recapitulation to bring us up to speed. See, what we have to understand is that Isaiah 49 is in reality a prediction of the new creation. Because you see, in the Old Testament, prophecies of the resurrection are prophecies of the restoration of Israel. Prophecies of the kingdom are prophecies of the wedding. Prophecies of the last days when God would remarry Israel, return to her, raise her from the dead, are all related to Israel, so that in fulfilling all of His covenant promises to Israel, He could bring the nations into her salvation fulfillment. That's Isaiah 49:6. So, we come now to Isaiah chapter 49, verse 19 and following. And these verses are, to a great extent, as I read the literature, it's really interesting to see how the commentators very often overlook or they miss the significance of this promise. Now, before I get to that, I want you to understand something. We are told, in fact, I was just going back over, my book, Marrying and Giving in Marriage in the New Creation. One of the most commonly heard objections to covenant eschatology is that, look, you say that we're in the age to come. You say the resurrection has occurred. No, that can't be true, we are told, because Jesus said that in the age to come, after the resurrection, there's no marrying and giving in marriage. So if you're claiming that we are in the age to come after the resurrection, then you shouldn't be married. In my 2012 formal public debate with Joel McDermott, and I have it highlighted right here in the book, Joel McDermott said, if those who will make it into the new age, if that's what Jesus is saying, neither marry or given in marriage, then folks, we shouldn't be marrying or giving in marriage in this age. Well, the trouble of it is for Mr. McDermott, he went ahead to say in 2015, there is indeed marrying and giving in marriage in the new heaven and the new earth. Totally contradicting himself. Now, that's the argument, though. No marrying, no giving in marriage in the new heaven and the new earth, in the new creation. Well, let's read together in Isaiah 49:19 and following. Your waste and desolate places in the land of your destruction will even now be too small for the inhabitants. See, this is the restoration. Those who swallowed you up will be far away. Watch this. The children you will have. Wait a minute. When are they going to have children? After their restoration. But wait a minute. Their restoration, according to Ezekiel 37, is the resurrection. And here God is saying, the children that you will have after you have lost the others. See, here are children after the loss of children. So here's destruction, followed by restoration. Oh, but watch. They will again say in your ears, the place is too small for me. Give me a place where I may dwell. Then you will say in your heart, who has begotten these for me? Since I have lost my children and I am desolate, a captive and wandering to and fro, who has brought these up? There I was, left alone, but these, where were they? In other words, children are being born, but Israel, quote, natural Israel, doesn't know where they came from. Don't you think if this is talking about literal physical children, they would know where they came from? I suggest to you that we have a ever so slight intimation, if you please, of what John wrote about in John 1:10-12. Jesus came to his own, and his own did not receive him. But to as many as received him, to them gave he the right, the authority, Greek word exousia, the authority to become sons of God, children of God, who were born not of the flesh, not of the will of man, but of God. See, here are children being born in the new creation. Now, that flies in the face of futurism, because futurism says in the age to come, sons of God are not produced either by faith or by family. Because you see, in this proposed new creation of futurism, number one, there's no marrying and giving in marriage, therefore no conjugal relations, therefore no children being born, unless you want to posit children being born outside of marriage. So it completely destroys that, the traditional view. And then they tell us, well, in the age to come, there's no sin and there's no evangelism. Well, if there's no evangelism, then there's no children being born, by faith. Do you see the problem here? Futurism simply cannot deal with what the text says. It has to be creative. It has to invent. It has to avoid what the text actually says. But make no mistake, folks, this text is talking about the restoration of Israel. It is talking about the resurrection of Israel, therefore, and it's talking about the new creation in which children would be born. Now, if it's talking about physical children, then it falsifies futurism. if it's talking about children being born by faith, then it destroys futurism. Either way. This is a powerful text, and it's a beautiful, beautiful text. Verse 21, then you will say in your heart, who has begotten these for me, since I have lost my children and I am desolate, a captive and wandering to and fro? You see, out of despair and death would come a new creation, one that they didn't recognize. And that's why Isaiah 43 says, you need to forget the former things, because I'm going to do a new thing that you have never even thought about. I'm going to do a brand new thing. So it's not the restoration of national Israel. It is not the restoration to a physical land. It is not the restoration of 12 tribes as a theocracy. It is a totally new people, called by a new name, as we shall see when we come to Isaiah 65. Okay, that's going to conclude our examination of Isaiah 49, even though we could go on. Oh, well, you know what? I better do at least one more video on Isaiah 49. Hey, listen, in the meantime, all right, here we are. I understand that November has already begun pretty well. Since we are dealing with remarriage and resurrection, I've mentioned this book already, Marrying and Giving in Marriage in the New Creation. Let me tell you also about my newest book, Paul on Trial, Paul, the Pharisees, and the Resurrection. Now, it's widely assumed, everyone says, you know, when Paul was in front of the Sanhedrin, he said, brethren, I'm a Pharisee. A Pharisee of the hope of the resurrection, I'm on trial. And the Pharisees, who believed in the resurrection, said, hey, you're a mighty fine guy, Paul. We don't find any fault with you. Therefore, that supposedly proves that Paul believed in physical resurrection. Unfortunately, that won't work. So, since remarriage and resurrection go hand in hand, all right, I want to offer for November these two books, Marrying and Giving in Marriage in the New Creation, and Paul on Trial, Paul, the Pharisees, and the Resurrection. Look, the feedback on this book has, I tell you, it's already been absolutely fantastic. So, go to my website, donkpreston.com, BibleProphecy.com, and order these two books. Now, we don't have a banner up yet. I'll be contacting Alan Morton, my webmaster, to put a banner up ASAP. Regular price on these is $23.80 plus $9.90 for shipping on each one. All right? For the month of November, total delivered price, U.S. orders only. All right? U.S. orders only, $20. I want to tell you what, folks. This book on Paul on Trial will blow your mind. And it will show you how misguided the arguments are when you want to argue, well, Paul was a Pharisee, the Pharisees believed in physical resurrection, therefore Paul believed in physical resurrection. This book, Marrying and Giving in Marriage, will answer a ton of your questions about the argument that, hey, if we're in the age to come, we shouldn't be married. That completely overlooks the biblical evidence concerning the age to come. So, again, go to my website, order both books, send me a note that you saw the offer on YouTube or Facebook. I'll refund all of your shipping and all of your money except $20. Okay? $20, postpaid, U.S. orders only. Okay? Thanks so much for joining me on this morning's Morning Musings. Appreciate you being with me. I'll see you on the flip side.